In part 1, we talked about 3 kinds of documentation: concepts, tasks, and reference, and how tasks are really goals and procedures that support those goals. This time, let's talk about where the user lives inside your documentation. What's the life cycle as someone goes from naive beginner to seasoned expert? Outside your doc set, there's a ton of other information: websites, blog posts, rumors, marketing, forums, and competitors' documentation. As a user, I start not having read any of this with no idea your product even exists. I talk to people, maybe see something online, get curious and look at your overview docs a little. After some exposure to your marketing department, I know what your product is for. I compare your product to others by reading the competitors' docs, of course. And eventually, let's say I choose to buy your product. Now I'm in your Getting Started guide. Once I'm set up, I need to learn how to accomplish my goals. I might look at how other people are using the product, things that aren't covered in your docs. I spend a little time in your reference materials. And as I continue to read your task-oriented docs, I become a competent operator of your product. I look online for the really advanced stuff, and at a certain point I remember how to do all the tasks and I don't need to read those sections anymore. I hardly look at the docs except when I need to look something up in the reference. Remember from part 1, this triangle represents how much of each documentation you need. Lots of reference, not so much overview, a moderate amount of procedural and goal-oriented content. Now, let's overlay a triangle that represents the amount of time a user spends in the docs. Lots of initial research, understanding the basic concepts, a little bit of time in the reference, and a moderate amount of time working on tasks. Here's how doc sets are often developed. We get the reference in place first, because you obviously need that, right? And then we do the conceptual material, because how can anyone use the product if they don't know what it is? Finally, we start filling in the how-to content, tutorials, use cases, processes, procedures, and we hope we fill in enough. Do you see why that's backwards? Look again at the overlaid triangles. If we take the intersection of the two, we'll see where the impact really is, content where the user wants to spend time, and where a lot of information should be available. Tasks, goals, and the procedures that support them. Of course the user wants to know what the product is, but more than that, the user wants to jump into what the product will do, and how to do it. As the user gains experience, knowing how to do things better becomes important, and creates a learning loop. This is the important exploration that makes beginners into experts, and should be the heartbeat of the documentation. Sure, it's important to be able to look up the obscure stuff in the reference section from time to time, but this central loop is really what makes users successful and happy. We all know what's easy to write: reference and overview, and those block diagrams everyone likes to put right up front. And now we know what's important: goals and procedures. So let's create a quick doc plan from what we've learned. Do the procedures first, then describe the goals they support. Then you can do the rest. Or forget it, you're done. Either way, get out there and write that fine manual.